We ought to invite him to this dinner, but it won't mean anything to him. I know him. This meant something to him. He's grateful, and I thank you, because he never forgot his roots. He never forgot his friends. He's a good man, and I thank you for honoring him tonight. I think this dinner is amazing. I think the Detroit NAACP is amazing. This is the biggest sit-down dinner in America. And people get fed on time, and unless the speaker's too long-winded, they get to go home on time. I thank you, Reverend Anthony, for your commitment to Detroit and your commitment to the larger world. I thank you for embodying the interdependence which characterizes every facet of American life. I thank you for wanting to build up the inner city of your hometown, and I thank you for caring about the desperate people who've been left behind in Rwanda and other places in Africa, where I cross your tracks in my work still today. I thank all of you for all the challenges you have in this community, for believing every day you can make it better, and for wanting every day to be tied to your brothers and sisters in Africa and other places around the world. I will be very brief tonight. Wendell's already given my political speech. And if I stay up here too long, you'll think how much younger and more handsome Mayor Kilpatrick is, and you wish he'd talk longer and I'd talk less. I want to ask you to think about just one thing, and just for a few minutes. You know what my politics are. You know what I believe. You know what I believe about the future of the country. You know I'm basically about to decide in my old age that women ought to start running everything. But I want to talk to you about what you and I, who are not going to be mayor, not going to be governor, not going to be senator, and not going to be president, can do. Because it's like the story Joel told about being 26. I'm already 60, so somebody could say, well, in 2008, I'll be 62 if I hang around, but I won't be president. I will, however, be a citizen, and so will you be a citizen. I wouldn't be a senator for anything. These people work too hard. Take it from me, they work all week and have to come home on the weekend, and they're always exhausted. But I want you to think about that. Just for 5 minutes, ride with me through the next few years as citizens. Do I want you to get active in the campaigns? Do I want Senator Levin to be elected? Do I have my own hopes for the presidential election, and do I want my party to reclaim the White House? Of course. But what I want to say to you is that if there ever comes a day when everybody you want to win wins, and they do everything you want them to do, don't hold your breath. But if it happens, you know as well as I do, there will still be a gap between where we are and where we ought to be. It will never make the need for the NAACP go away. It won't mean people don't need their local churches to minister to the body as well as the spirit of their members. When I was president and I came here, and Reverend Anthony gave me that great piece of serpentine stone sculpture from Zimbabwe, which is still in my apartment, in my presidential library, you thought I'd done a pretty good job, but you knew that a lot of things needed done on the street in Detroit, on the street in every city in America and all around the world. So consider this. Let's assume that we finally have a serious economic policy to bring back manufacturing, stop borrowing all this money from people overseas so we can't enforce our trade laws, to make a commitment to a clean, independent energy future that will create jobs, to provide health care to all Americans at an affordable rate, and work on prevention as well as treating people when they're sick. Well, in other words, let's just assume that it all comes out the way many of us in this room would like it to happen. You really think there won't be any problems in Detroit that you need to attend to? Or there won't be any problems in Harlem that I'm obligated to try to deal with? That's what I want you to think about. I want to give you 2 or 3 examples of things that I want every NAACP chapter in America to be involved with, because our people's future depends on it. First of all, this economy of ours has been great for me and for several of you. I mean, you could buy a ticket tonight, but it's not such a good deal for a lot of people. The economy is growing, but median wages are flat, more people working, falling below the poverty line, more people working, losing their family's health insurance. It is not such a great deal. People are making more and more complex financial decisions than ever before. They have to assume more risk. They're changing all these retirement programs from defined benefit to defined contribution. People used to be able to buy a home with a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Now you've got all these different things. It's all I can do to keep up with them and make sure I'm making good decisions. And I can afford good health. Meanwhile, the cost of health care, housing, and college education, transportation have all gone up way more than incomes have. And in a lot of our communities, low and moderate income working people are burdened with literally financially toxic, high-cost financial services instead of regular banking services that most of us depend on. For example, I want you to think about this. This is not about the presidential election. This is about how you're going to live next week. There are more payday loan shops in America than there are McDonald's franchises. 90% of the lending industry comes from borrowers who do not pay off their loan on time. The typical payday borrower pays back $792 for a $325 loan. More than $1 billion in tax refund money vanishes from people's pockets every year because of something called the Refund Anticipation Loan, RL. You know what that is? You're going to get a tax refund, and so you go and get your tax refund a week or 2 early. A refund anticipation loan. In other words, you're borrowing from money you know you're going to get, but you haven't received it yet. Then sometimes around the holidays, people do it, and they maxed out on their credit card, and they still want to buy a couple of more presents, so they borrow money on top of their refund anticipation loan called a pay stub loan. Now, people get money in their pockets if they're desperate. A lot of times it's not holiday spending. A lot of times they do this because of medical emergencies. But when you add the fees and the interest rates up, the typical one of these loans winds up being paid back plus interest of 40 to 500%. As a result, a lot of people are going bankrupt quicker. because they don't have access to ordinary banking services. Now, we're working to try to find some practical ways to change that with my foundation in New York and around the country. And I want you to help the mayor in Detroit and the good bankers that are here do this. There are 28 million Americans who have jobs, write checks, and spend money who don't have bank accounts. They are very vulnerable to this kind of problem. This is a freedom issue, just as much as getting the earned income tax credit if you deserve it. It's a freedom issue. You don't feel very free if every time you cash a paycheck, 100% of the money is already obligated, and after you pay your bills, you still owe more money. You don't feel free. We know that even poor people with the most modest incomes can be good credit risk. After all, the Nobel Prize last year went to Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh, who's made over 7 million loans in the last 30 years in a country with a per capita income of $1 a day, with a 98% repayment rate. But he doesn't gig them on the interest rates. And 58% of the people who borrowed money in that country used the money to lift themselves above the international poverty line, not be driven down deeper and deeper and deeper into poverty by people who are charging them too much money because they're not in the banking system. Americans spend $10 billion a year, low-income working people, on these so-called alternative financial transactions. So I want you to help me as we work together to get lower-income working people into the banking system. We need to put that together, whatever happens in the election. Second thing, the next president and the Congress could give you quality, affordable health care no one could ever take away from you. For the first time ever, we could help our auto executives and the UAW bring back the American auto industry by lifting the burdens of awful legacy costs off of them for health care. And in 10 years, we'll be right back where we are now if we don't do something about the rising tide of childhood obesity and diabetes among our children. It is threatening our future. A couple years ago, Emory University's distinguished medical school did a study they released that said that over 25% of increased health care costs during my presidency were directly related or indirectly related to rising problems related to obesity and to diabetes. We're already spending 50% more than anybody else in the world is on health care. If we just cover everybody and we throw the cost on the same people, we'll be digging the auto companies and the UAW in a bigger hole. But if we have the right kind of changes and coverage, we'll be a better country morally and a smarter country economically. But then, if we don't do anything about our kids getting sicker and sicker and sicker, within a decade, the healthcare system will blow up, the economy will start to tank again, and worst of all, we'll be raising the first generation of kids to have shorter lives than their parents. There was a medical report which came out just a couple of months ago predicting that 1 in 3 children born after the year 2000 will develop diabetes. That's unheard of. I was down in the Gulf Coast area working on the Katrina aftermath, and I was in a wonderful African-American housing neighborhood developed by the grand old Dorothy Height, who's 98 years old and still working. And it was really kind of sad because it was a wonderful middle-class family, and all these people had just paid off their fixed-rate 30-year mortgage before Katrina came and took their houses away. But they were all insured, and they were going to come back. Here's the point. All the people came out to see me, the old people, the middle-aged people, and the young people. Over under a tree, there are all these younger people. They're all, like I'd say, the oldest person outside was maybe 32, everybody else younger. I shook hands with this lovely woman, and I talked to her about her loss. And she couldn't have been a day over 32, 34 years old. She was sitting in a wheelchair with her right leg amputated below the knee because she had premature adult onset diabetes. And we're going to have more of that. So I say to you, is your church doing what it can to teach people about nutrition and exercise and help people turn this around? Is your school doing what it should? Have we provided opportunities in every neighborhood for people to move around? This is going to eat this country alive. After I nearly died, based on my lifelong affliction for fried Southern food, I became, just like the reformed alcoholic. Now, I'm absurd about this. I just don't want these kids to die before their time. I've reached the age where that's the most important thing to me. I don't want any child to die before his or her time or to be denied the right to live their dreams. And we have to turn that around. We cannot expect the president and the Congress and the governor and the mayor to do this work for us. We have to help at the grassroots level. We got to give our children their lives back. We have got to do it all together. The last thing I want to say is this. The mayor and the governor gave me a day I'll never forget today by taking me over to this tech town to see that next energy project, which I hope you all know about. With all these bright young entrepreneurs based here in and around Detroit, thinking about how to have a clean energy, clean car future that will bring manufacturing jobs back here and rescue our economy. I just want to say this to you. You should support them. You should support them, not just, even if you never go to work in an auto plant, you should support them. Just think what would happen if Detroit decided that you would have the most energy efficient city anywhere in the world. You could go back and retrofit all their buildings. Who would do that? People from Detroit. You don't have to worry about somebody outsourcing you putting a new window in a building or a new light in a fixture or a new bit of sod on a roof to cut down the air conditioning bill. You can lower utility rates, create jobs, and give America a new future. So you support what the governor and the mayor are doing because we have to have a future where we can create more jobs at higher incomes, and they don't need to be jobs that somebody can send overseas tomorrow or the next day. Make a commitment to a clean energy future, support them, make this work, and you will be proud you did. So that's it. I didn't talk very long, did I? I spend a lot of time thinking about, in my current life, what should we do as citizens, no matter what the politicians do. I've reached the age where I'm not very comfortable anymore just criticizing somebody. You know, when Mr. Imus made that dumb old comment about the Rutgers women's basketball team, remember that? So the very next day, or a couple days later, while he was stewing the juice and it was all over the tabloids in New York, I went down to a Methodist church built in the late 1700s to celebrate the 20th anniversary of an African-American Baptist female preacher from Brooklyn, Susan Johnson Cook, who's a great friend of mine. Every week for 20 years, she's gone down to Wall Street and opened that church so people could come in for spiritual nourishment at lunchtime. So she said, it's my 20th anniversary, will you come? I came. It was coincidental that we were having all the flap about Mr. Imus and the Rutgers women. So Susan Johnson Cook is about my size. She is a very formidable woman, and she gave a speech and then a sermon, and people were laughing and crying and jumping up and down, kind of like you were when Wendell was talking. And then she introduced me, and I said, well, I know I'm not running for anything anymore, or I would never be dumb enough to speak behind her. But I asked the people to consider this. I said, look, I think what Mr. Imus said was wrong. It was racist and sexist and also just flat wrong. He obviously never watched the Rutgers women's basketball team in that tournament. I did, and they were beautiful, fast, and strong. So he didn't see them. But the main thing I want to say is, I looked at a picture of him in the paper, and then I saw Reverend Cook up here on the podium. He was sad, and she was happy. Why? Because one of them's building, and the other is breaking. One of them's uniting, and the other is dividing. One of them is complaining, and the other one wakes up every day and thinks, what can I do today to make the people I care about better off? And you don't really have to spend much time criticizing people you disagree with. You ought to go to church Sunday, or to temple on Friday, or to the mosque and pray for their soul. You don't really have to spend much time, because if you look at pictures of them after so many years, we all get what we deserve based on what's in our heart. And so I ask you, help the mayor, help the governor, help Reverend Anthony. Think about things I said. Get working people in the banking system and stop them getting the shaft, paying interest rates they can't pay and going broke because of health care emergencies, number one. Number two, help our kids live healthier lives so when we do get universal affordable health coverage, we can sustain it and we can do it and keep the economy going. And number three, help these folks build a clean, independent energy Detroit and Michigan. It'll create more jobs than you can ever believe for all of our people. I love you. God bless you, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank President Clinton. If you would just hold for just 1 second while we have the closing benediction or prayer. If you would just pause for a moment. Thank you for staying. If you would just pause for the final prayer. I'm going to ask that you might turn to Reverend Hiram McBurrows Jr., pastor of the Romulus Community Baptist Church. He will be at the yellow dais. Is Reverend McBurrows in place? Or is he at the red dais? Reverend McBurrows? At the red dais. Please turn to the red dais for Reverend McBurrows. Go right ahead, sir.
Shall we pray? A benediction is a mantle to close those who are destined for greatness through struggle and adversity. A great woman said, Angela McBurrows is her name, if you do nothing, you need no benediction. Father, we pray that you would bless your people. As we have gathered together this night, we ask your choice blessing and your benediction. Lead us, guide us, lift up your countenance upon us, give us peace, and your name shall have our praise. We ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much.